And now I've broken that 1022. I can still have the ability to shoot all that 22 ammo in my handgun. Whereas, let's say I have an AR as my go-to, and I break an extractor, and you didn't do what I suggested and keep a spare extractor in your pistol grip. Now, at least until I find a complete bolt or another extractor or something in that AR, that's dead weight, and all that ammo is dead weight. And I gotta haul all that around on my Lamborghinis until I get to where I'm going, find another part. At least with the 22, I can just use that ammo in my sidearm. So those are some real good reasons you might choose a 22 handgun. Just like the 22 in a rifle, it does lose some power and velocity, but it's still a great small game round. We talked about that. To me, a survival gun has to be dual purpose. It has to be defense and putting food on the table. And that's primarily for a long gun. If this is your backup gun, it can just be a combat handgun. Because if I've got a shotgun, it may come a time, like I said, running a trap line where I'm going to use the 22 handgun versus a shotgun to save ammo. But I'm less concerned with that with the handgun, but it's a fine small game round. So let's talk about some top choices for the 22 sidearm for the end of the world as we know it. Mine is going to be my number one go-to 22 handgun, and that's going to be a Ruger Mark IV 2245. I like the 1911. I've alluded to that. I like guns that shoot similarly to the 1911. The Ruger Mark IV 2245 is built to be the same grip angle, very similar grips and everything to a 1911. It also doesn't have a 1911 straight back trigger, but it has a very good trigger, especially with a Volquartsen trigger kit in it. I have the tactical version, which means you can mount an optic on the top and a light on the bottom. One of the great things about the Ruger, as opposed to a lot of other semi-automatic 22s, is it's not some copy of a handgun. Like, let's say it's not a 1911 made into a 22. It's built from the ground up to be its own thing and engineered around the 22. Those other, like 1911 22s, are great. However, they're great for training. Like, they have a similar manual of arms. They have a lot of continuity in training between training with your 22 and training with your 1911. But that's not really what we're talking about here. The Ruger and similar guns to it, I'm talking about the Ruger Mark 1, 2, 3, and 4, and the Browning Buckmark. They're built from the ground up for being reliable and shooting the 22 well. They're not some replica of a 1911 with a much lighter slide and a bunch of different other things to get it to run 22, right? It's built from the ground up to shoot 22. And because you don't need all that reciprocating mass, it's got a fixed barrel and receiver, and the sights are permanently attached to that. So they can be very, very, very accurate. I mean, crazy accurate. You don't have to worry about the slide moving and tolerances and things like that. They can be very, very accurate because, again, they're a fixed barrel, fixed receiver, fixed sights. They can be very accurate. And they don't have to move the entire weight of the slide around, just a bolt. So, in my experience, they're some of the most reliable as far as reliable semi-auto 22 handguns go. So that would be my number one choice. They also make a light version. I don't have that version. If I was going to pick one, if this was going to be my go-to, which it's not, then I would probably get one of the lights. And if you want to make something even better, the Taxol Tactical Solutions, they make really lightweight uppers for the Ruger Mark 1, 2, 3, and 4, at least as I was. I know they make them for the Mark 3 and Mark 4. They may not have made them for the older versions. Make sure it's compatible with what you have. But those are really light and really accurate and really awesome little things. The Taxol, if you're not familiar with them, they make parts for the Ruger 1022, the Rugers, I think the Browning Buckmarks maybe. But they make really high-end, lightweight, competition-style stuff. And very good. I would recommend those. That if I was building one for this, I'd probably go with either the light version or the Taxol barrel and upper part with a standard everything else in a Volquartsen trigger. That'd be my number one. And the great thing about the Rugers and some of the other ones, you direct mount the optic onto the receiver. It's not like most modern pistols where you mount it on the slide and it moves back and forth. It mounts directly to the receiver, and if you mount it right, it should not move. Again, aiding in that accuracy. And also, since it doesn't move back and forth and there's not a lot of recoil, you should be able to track that sight. So you should be able to shoot very quickly with it. So that'd be my pick for a semi-auto. Again, the Browning Buckmark is a good one also. Just the way that I shoot and the way that I train, I pretty much shoot the same way. And I can't, the way the controls are configured, I can't run a Buckmark that way. And so I bought one and then got rid of it for that reason. But that might not apply to you. Browning Buckmark is very similar in the way they're built. Very good design, proven over time. So that'd be an honorable mention for that. Now let's talk about why you might want a .22 revolver. And there's a lot of reasons for this. We talked about, in the first episode, the first long gun episode, even if your platform, your gun is 100% reliable, and none of them are, .22 rimfire ammo is less reliable, right? Less reliable. So that's a concern. A lot of times it's a failure to fire. That rim has the priming compound. A lot of times that priming compound does not go all the way around the rim, so you'll hit part of it and the round won't go off. If you are shooting a semi-auto, that's probably a tap rack bang scenario. But with a revolver, you can literally just pull the trigger again and it moves a fresh cylinder and a fresh round into firing position. So that's a big advantage here. You think .22 ammo is unreliable now. How about in the apocalypse when, sanitation, you're probably not storing it in a cool dry ammo can. All that stuff may even make it more unreliable. In those kind of scenarios, a .22 revolver has a lot of merit, right? So that's a big reason for the .22 revolver. The same reason you might choose a centerfire revolver also. They are pretty forgiving of harsh environments. People think that they're simple. They're simple for you to use, but they're quite complex inside. I imagine that something like a Smith & Wesson 617, which is a .22 version of their bigger guns, has more moving parts than a Glock. But for the end user, they are very simple. So they have that going for them. They don't have a lot of ingress points for dirt and sand and things like that. So a great choice. If I was going the revolver route, I would probably go stainless. The 617 might be my go-to. I may also choose, instead of stainless, one of the polymer Ruger LCR X's with the hammer, slightly longer barrel if they make one. That would be a good choice. But the .22 revolvers have a lot of merit in that situation, just especially for the unreliability of the ammo, right? Let's talk about .22 Magnum. I'm going to briefly touch on it. Now, if you're running a .22 long rifle, you're probably not running .22 mag for your handgun. This is probably, if this is what your go-to is and you have another caliber for your primary, a main battle rifle, if that's what you call it, a big bore battle rifle, or an AR, or an AK, or a shotgun, and you decide .22 mag is what you're going to run in your handgun. .22 mag is quite a bit more powerful, and it doesn't have a lot more weight. So it does have a really good power to weight ratio. So that's a good thing going for it. And it's not as light as .22 long rifle, but it is quite a bit more powerful, and it's not that much heavier. So there's a lot of merit there. Also, it's not as common to find, so there's a demerit there. You're probably not coming across it as often. But if you're planning on packing it all, you can pack quite a bit of it, probably more than you're ever going to need to have to scavenge any. So there is some real merit in the .22 Magnum for this. One thing for that is the .22 Magnum in a handgun tends to be really loud. It's meant for a rifle, so there tends to be quite a bit of unburnt powder, so it can be quite loud even compared to other centerfire handguns. So keep that in mind. I'm not saying that's a plus or a minus, just it's something to consider. And since we talked about the .22 revolver, that's a pretty good segue to talk about centerfire revolvers, right? Why in the 21st century, in the world of polymer striker fire madness, when everybody, it seems like every week somebody's coming out with a new polymer striker fire handgun, why would you choose a revolver? Well, we touched on it. That ammo thing is a big one. Even centerfire that's reliable now, again, if it's a couple of years into a big event, the crunch, right? If it's a couple of years into the crunch and things have gotten really bad, that ammo may have been in there for a while. It may have gotten hot and cold and dry and wet and dry again, and who knows what, right? So if you do have a misfire, you can just pull the trigger again, which is a big advantage. Also, revolvers are not reliant on the power of the cartridge to cycle the machine. A semi-auto, you can go 9mm 115 grain or 147 grain. If you're looking at 115, you're looking at like 1,200 feet a second. I'm just throwing round numbers out there, right? Not exact numbers. If you're throwing 147, you're looking at like 960. Okay? So you have that, but you have a very limited range at which you can reliably cycle that slide and not break the gun. But you don't have to worry about that with a revolver. If you go with a revolver and say 38 Special 357, which would be my top choice for a center fire, I can go super, super mild, right? I can download really soft lead wad cutters or semi-wad cutters for the 38 Special. And I can go super wild. I can go 180 grain hard cast semi-wad cutter for big game, penetration power, all that stuff, and they'll cycle just fine in that revolver. Point of aim, point of impact is another thing, but as far as cycling that revolver, it should make no difference in how that revolver cycles. So you have a lot more of a lateral limit, both up and down, in the revolver. And if I wanted to shoot something like a grouse, let's say, I could shoot it with that really powder puff 38 special load, not blow it apart. And if I wanted to shoot a bear, I would not feel undergunned with a 180 grain hardcast semi-wad cutter in that, let's say, Smith & Wesson K-frame size gun. If I was going to go this route, I would go with a medium-sized handgun. I wouldn't go super small for this. I wouldn't go J-frame for this, right? Because you're probably not carrying it super concealed all the time because it's the apocalypse. Again, you're not walking around Target with soccer moms everywhere. So I'd go medium frame. I'd go K-frame. I'd probably go anywhere between 3, 4, and 5 inches, 5 being the most common, but somewhere in that range, so it's not crazy heavy, and it's a good shootable size. So the old police size, combat magnum, combat masterpiece, that similar size gun. Ruger GP100 would be a good choice. They're a little overbuilt, but in the apocalypse, it's probably a good thing, right? At least I think they're overbuilt. Something like a Colt Python, something in that size range, right? That would be a good choice, especially if you were going to run like a lever gun in 357 for your primary. You get that commonality of ammo type thing. I would not go 44 Magnum for this. 44 Magnum, the handguns themselves tend to be quite a bit heavier. You're going to be carrying a lot of other stuff. And again, this is a backup gun. This is not your go-to fighting gun. You're not going to Dirty Harry it through the apocalypse with your 44 mag. Right? So I don't think 44 mag is viable for this. Maybe if you were running a 44 mag lever gun and you just happen to do 44 for the sidearm, but I think it's too heavy and the ammo is very heavy. Especially if you're talking like 300 grain bullets, 240 grain bullets. That ammo is heavy, and I would not consider that, and like I said, unless it was the commonality of ammo thing. And even then, if I was doing that, I would still think 357 is the most flexible. Alright, so segueing again, we talked about revolvers. That usually denotes metal. Old school metal guns. And we started on the 1911. I want to bring it back to a little bit later iterations of good metal guns, not polymer striker fires. In this category, I'm talking like your Browning high powers, your CZ75, your Beretta 92, and your SIG 226. Kind of all those, that era of like Cold War metal hammer fired guns. And I like those guns. My go-to prime choice for a carry gun right now, I'll be honest, I'm carrying an M17, but my general go-to is a SIG 226 single action only. And my go-to gun for the apocalypse that lives in my baby bug out bag is a Wilson Combat Beretta 92. That has stayed in there for a reason. It is an awesome gun. It is very accurate. It is very reliable. I find it really good and shootable like a 1911 is. It's got a fine trigger. Is it as great as a good model, or not model, but Series 70 1911 trigger? No, it's not. But it's like, if the SIG 320 is 50% there between that and a Glock, that's like 80% there. It is a great trigger. It is double action, single action. My Beretta and a lot of these are, so I don't like that day to day for my CCW gun, because I may have to go from 0 to 60 real quick. But for an apocalypse gun like that, or like a battlefield gun, you'll know if you've listened to that episode, I consider the Beretta the finest combat handgun. And for an environment like that, I think it has a lot of merit. It's a good to go handgun. If you're going to run the Beretta, get the decocker only models or convert yours to decocker only. That is one flaw. I do believe the original versions had it on the frame, the safety that is, and then it was actually the U.S. military, for whatever reason, as I understand it, that wanted it on the slide. So that's neither here nor there, but get the decocker or get the single action only. That's the way I would go. The SIGs, same thing. They are great guns. The SIG 226, 229s, fantastic, great, very shootable. You know, they're known for being reliable. Those two guns pass the, rigorous combat handgun standards of the military. They're proven, they're well known, and if you are a good shooter, I think you will get more out of those guns than a Glock. That's just my opinion. Glocks are fine. We already talked about them. But I think there is a place for those metal hammer-fired guns. I'm going to segue into the plan B if you're on a budget. Let's say you've saved up, you've got your long gun, and you're looking at getting a handgun, but wisely you know that you need to stockpile food and antibiotics and water and medical kits and all that other stuff, right? Because you're not going to shoot your way out of an infection. So you need all that other stuff. You think you should get a sidearm, but you don't want to go out and spend $1,200 on a Wilson Combat Beretta 92 or whatever they cost them. They're probably more than that with inflation. But you've decided that you want to get a sidearm. If you're going to go the 22 route, honorable mention would be the Heritage Rough Riders or the new Ruger Wranglers, very similar. Are they the best gun? Are they best defensive gun? Are they single action? Yeah, they are. But for on a budget, they are very affordable. I don't know what they are now with inflation, but I want to say they're well under $200 for the Heritage Rough Rider, maybe under $150. And I've used those a ton, especially to train new shooters. And if it's a backup gun and you have a lot of other stuff that you want to purchase, or that's all you can afford, and you want to go the 22 route, not a bad choice. Not a bad choice. If you're going to go centerfire 9mm route, the Sccy's SCCY, good American-made gun. They are double action only. I think they do make a striker-fired version now, but they're a good, very reliable platform. You're not getting any frills, you're not getting anything fancy, but they're a good, reliable handgun. In fact, very reliable in my experience. They're not the best with ergonomics. They're not the best with like the trigger. It's a long double action trigger, much like a double action revolver trigger, but they're good and reliable for the money. I'm not going to mention High Point for this because I think they're just too heavy. If you're carrying all this other stuff, you're going to want a lighter weight, I think, sidearm. If a High Point is all you can afford for a truck gun or in your glove box or whatever, if it's legal, I'd say it's fine for that. But if you're going to carry it, there's better options. Not that there's anything wrong with High Point, they're just heavy. And this is not the application for that. So those are some thoughts on the backup gun for the apocalypse, your sidearm to your long gun. If you guys do like this, I got some good feedback from the first one. If you guys do like this, let me know. Maybe I'll do a third one on your plan C, your fixed blade knife or your knives, whatever the case may be, your blade. Maybe we'll include machetes and tomahawks and things like that for your loadout for the apocalypse. Tactical tip of the day: glow sticks. Glow sticks have a lot of applications. The military uses them, the military issues them, and there's good reason. They have applications for things like CQB. You're clearing rooms. You might have green for good, and you throw one after a room's been cleared or after an area has been cleared. And you might have red. If you think a guy's in an area, you might throw it somewhere where he can't see it inside the room, but everybody coming down the hallways from any direction can see it. and you're gathering your forces to make entry on that room, and that's a signal like, stop, let's hold up here, let's get ready, and then when we're ready, we'll go. There's all kinds of signals and stuff you can do with a glow stick. If you're coming out of a room and that room's cleared, you can throw a certain color glow stick. That way you know, hey, that room's good to go. There, I don't need to check that room. I'm walking by, I look in, somebody's already cleared it. It's good to go, especially in big operations and in cities and stuff like that, or big complexes. Also outside, you can hang them to light the beginning of a trail or something so you don't get lost. Not everything's got to be tactical. Sometimes you just need light, or they're not great for like light to do tasks at night. They're good for like signaling or finding. Like if you want to mark your camp so you don't walk past your camp at night, or a real common one, get the small ones and put them on your strings for your tent if you have a tent that takes strings so you don't trip on them. You don't want to fall and bust your teeth open on a rock because you tripped on your tent string. There's a lot of practical applications for these. You can also, tie them onto a string and swing them in certain configurations for certain signals. In a time when comms go down, think of it like a new version of the old school smoke signals. Use those commonly in the military for an LZ. You take it, tie it on a piece of string, and swing it around for the whirlybird, for the helicopter to see where you are so they can land when you've gotten a good LZ. So there's things like that, and you could do any configuration of that. Like you could do a figure 8 for it means this. If I'm swinging a red one, it means this. If I'm swinging a green one, it means that. Yeah, and you can use it for all manner of things. So I think especially if you have a group, a couple of glow sticks of different colors, and you come up with your own standard SOPs. Blue is this, red is this, green is this. It could be you save the blue one for if somebody gets lost. Because people get lost in the woods. I've been lost in the woods. It happens. Especially out in the wilderness. It's foggy. It's dark. You don't know what direction is what. Anyway, like you might designate blue if you get lost. Somebody breaks it and puts it on their pack on their shoulder, so anybody around sees that blue glow stick that's broken and lit up. They say, "Hey, that guy's lost. We need to go help him." You could use that in a Boy Scout group or something, make sure everybody has one. I don't know, I'm just throwing stuff out there, but I think a glow stick may belong in your kit if you're talking about like a bug out kit, a emergency kit, something like that. They can really come in handy. If you're wanting something in life, something good, something holy, have you prayed about it? Have you asked about it? And I would submit that whatever we have is a gift from God. If you are seeking something, go to the one that has the answers. Go to God. Nothing is too big or too small for the Lord. So our tactical verse of the day is going to be, and this comes up several times in the Bible, I'm just going to pick one, but is anything too hard for the Lord? Genesis 18, is anything too hard for the Lord? I will return to you at an appointed time next year, and Sarah will have a son. Nothing's too hard for the Lord. Sarah was 90 years old when she had a son. Nothing is too hard for the Lord. He made the heavens and the earth and the sun and every mountain and every tree. Was created and exists by the grace of God, by God's love. Don't ever think that anything is too hard for the Lord. If you desire something, go ask for it. It's also written in the Bible, another verse, you do not have because you do not ask. So ask. Spend time with God. Pray to Him. He wants to spend time with you. He loves you. Spend time with Him. Pray to Him. Ask Him. Praise Him. Worship Him. With that, men, thanks for listening, and have a blessed day.